Claire. I am a knitting and fiber artist and painter here on YouTube. And today I really wanted to talk about color combinations and how I come up with my color combinations. It's truly such a fun process for me. Just the planning stages of a project is probably like one of the best parts, honestly. I put a lot of stock into the colors that I'm working with. I feel like having to stare at a knitting project and the colors that I've chosen for the whole project is such a big part of the process and everything. So I always want to choose the perfect colors, and I do get a little uptight about what colors I pick. This is just going to be my tried and true way of choosing colors based on things I really love in nature, or little images or scenes that I see all the time in nature that I just know I gravitate towards. And I feel like doing this, using nature as inspiration, is like a perfect tried and true way for me to end up with a project that is super special and that I really like. I'm gonna go into a little bit about how I've chosen the colors for my next project coming up. Lately, there's been a lot of projects with color combinations and things that I would just love to make. So this video is going to be more so for trying to pick the absolute perfect colors to not just one, be a nice color, but also to work with each other in a project, whether you're doing stripes, ombres, whether I'm doing like a duplicate stitch or intarsia kind of design. Just seeing how these two colors work together, I feel like looking at what I like in nature is the best way for me to predict what I'm gonna like in a project in terms of how these colors are gonna work together. So these little natural vignettes, I guess, can be really anything. They can be just like a landscape you really love. They could be honestly a building in like a natural setting that you really love. I kind of end up gravitating towards vegetal images. So for me, I really love different types of striations on leaves or vegetables and things with like all the way like colors interact. It just makes me so chuffed. I don't know, it's just like a wonderful thing to kind of admire the different colors just like interacting on a plant itself, and just how they bounce off of each other in the day and during the night, and not just like a specific plant, but how it's interacting with maybe like the sky, or how it is interacting with a darker tree behind it. So for instance, these like flowers at dusk are so beautiful, and you can see them kind of glow because of the darker green behind them. So dark and like velvety and rich that it really makes this like lighter lilac color kind of glow and look very luminescent, whereas the lilac on its own without that darker color next to it would give a totally different vibe. It would probably feel a little more pastel or soft. But the two colors together make this combination really striking. So we're gonna examine a couple different examples and how the colors interplay, and then how we can use that in our knitting project. So we have the dot top. I love this top so much. This is probably gonna be my very next video. I've just gotten the yarn for it, and I'm going to be going into right now how I chose those yarns. And when I tell you it was a process, it was such a process. This is gonna be like the most convoluted way of choosing colors, but like super regimented. You can listen to this and totally just like take a few things and do like a very generalized version of choosing colors based on this. It's usually what I do, but for this top I just wanted the colors to be so perfect together. And there were actually two things to consider for this project that I don't normally have to consider as much.
Something that I failed to consider when recording this is you may not know what the dot top is. In that case, it is a top that uses illusion, shadow knitting, and the combination of pearls and flatter kind of knit stitches to create a kind of holographic effect. But you need to really consider the yarns that you're using for this effect to show up. So, that in mind.
Everyone else's work and everything, I do think that you don't really need like a super light color and a super dark color, which is the way I went. You can also get that contrast from two colors that are honestly like the same value, but you can really see like a strong difference between them. So think like a really bright red and a really bright green, whereas they might not both be really dark or light. They are complementary colors, so they're gonna pop apart from each other no matter what. So I did have to consider that, and I did choose to go with a super light color and a super dark color. So that was one thing I was considering, and I was also considering I really wanted these two colors to be colors that I really loved, both on their own and together. I wanted them to kind of create an effect that I just really loved. I think as soon as you put two colors next to each other, you're immediately creating a mood or a vibe. So maybe like a brown and a mustard color would kind of start to feel like a deserty vibe, and so on. But for this piece, I first gathered images that I really, really love the vibe of, or that harbor like a specific memory for me, and I just really love these little stills, especially in terms of color and whatnot. I wasn't really considering the lights and the darks so much yet, mostly just the color and the general vibe of the image. So here are maybe like 3 or 4 images that I ended up choosing from. So these are our starting points. So this is the first little step that I have in this process. And then we get a little more convoluted. I take all those images and I zoom in like a lot to a particular point of the image that I really love. So I have, say for instance, this lily pad image. I really love not just like the lily pads and all this stuff. There's lots of colors going on in one image, so it's a little hard to like pick just 2 colors from this one image. Makes it so much easier just to zoom into your favorite part. So my favorite part here is just that like beautiful, soft, kind of like rosy, grayish, bluish petal color right next to that like darker olive green. I think it's just like so scrumptious. What a wonderful little combo. So I zoomed into that like a lot. And then I did that for all the images that I had. And even just at this point, you can kind of start picking off images that you don't really love as much. So if you zoom in and you feel like the whole image doesn't have as much power to you as it did with like all the colors and all the shapes and forms and things going on in it, then you can probably X that one out, and it's not really condensed colors that you're going for with that image. It's probably the image overall that is giving you a very wonderful vibe. So just zooming in, I feel like really kind of starts to show you what you like about each image and if that will work for the project that you're looking for. The next step, this is the super convoluted part. You really don't have to do this, but I was trying to be so specific, and I was so stressed about choosing the right colors that I used an app called Pixelator to pixelate every single photo. And you can kind of toggle the amount of pixelation that you want in this app. So what I did was I made it super pixelated. The pixels I did make pretty big. I wanted to be able to see those colors that I had going on in there really well to better be able to match some yarns to them. So after you've pixelated, what you're gonna do is you're going to take, and you can do this digitally, you can just color drop to like the specific pixels that you like and just do like a little digital mock-up of your 2 colors that you like together. But I like to do it by colored pencil. I feel like if there's 2 colors that I really like, or 2 pixels next to each other that I like, and I want to combine them into one, I can do that with colored pencil. So I will show, and you can kind of see the little vignettes I've made for this project. The ones I really like have stars next to them, And you can see that I've done a little bit of variation in some of them. So some of them have maybe like a purple mixing with a green or something. And for that, you can do, because yarn is not super strict. You have hand-dyed yarns, you have all sorts of really fun color combinations that you can play around with. And I feel like that is just like a lovely way to incorporate the mood of a few colors together and distill it into like one yarn. I did do that with some of my color swatches, and especially for this project, I feel like I don't really like stripes because I feel like they're very strong and harsh and severe, but they're not so constricting when you're able to kind of squeeze a couple more colors or variations in there, and they're not so repetitive. That's what I did for this project. I was really looking at hand-dyed yarns or yarns with a little bit of like interest in them. I knew I couldn't do tweed because it's not recommended to do the shadow knitting with a textured yarn going on in there. So I have my sketches, and then when you're choosing your yarn, you don't have to be super precious about all the work you've done. I feel like for many this would be really hard, but for me, I feel like it's all part of the process to get me there. Yarns are not going to perfectly match the color sketching that you've done and everything, and so I understand how that would probably feel really frustrating, but for me, I don't really mind it. It's still like a jumping off point. I'm still working my way from the photo, and I feel like we're trying to create a vibe. We're not really trying to create the actual photo itself, and I'm having fun along the way. So that's the next step. I then went ahead and I scrolled on Wool & Co. and go through as many yarns as you can and just screenshot some or save some or put some aside of some yarns that you think match each little vignette that you've created. So what I ended up doing was I ended up choosing some yarns for each of my top photos. So these are the yarns I ended up with. And this is the combination that I love the absolute most. It is the lily pad combination that we ended up with. So here's the photo to pixel to yarn combo steps. And then I was like, I love this yarn combination, but I don't feel like it has enough contrast for the shadow knitting. And it probably would have worked for it, but I'm happy with where I went with it. So I darkened the green, did a little bit more looking. So I got a darker green that still I feel like has some variation and a fun vibe. And then what I did was I switched up my lighter color and I went with this like bluish Madeline Tosh hand-dyed yarn. I loved it so much. But at the last possible second, I actually just randomly saw their matcha colorway of the same yarn. I was intrigued and I got that instead. And it didn't really come with the exact color palette that it seemed to have online. I really wish I was able to like go in person and pick these yarns out, but I knew it probably wasn't going to be exactly the same as the color palette online, and I think that's why it's so important to go onto Ravelry and see what these yarns look like in their colorways, knit up, and by other people if you're really nervous about it. But all in all, I do like how it is. It's a little bit more grayish than I thought it was going to be, but I think it is still a beautiful, soft gray color, and it has some of the warmth that you're getting from the leaf in the lily pad image, and it still has that softness that I feel like you get from the petal next to that really harsh, like bright, vibrant green from the leaf. So overall, I feel like I still kind of got the vibe of the image that I was going for, but you can see the journey going along the way. It was very long, and I feel like it was very fun and enjoyable to me. But that's how I chose those two colors for this top. But I did kind of want to go into why I feel like this process, it kind of sounds very convoluted and silly, but I want to go into why it would be like so important, or to me is such a huge part of my process, and why I would not change it for anything else. If there was a way that you could click into, say, the dreaded AI and say, give me 2 colors from this photo that matches the vibe, I would never do it. I would never, ever change my process from this very long process for a bunch of reasons. This process is so necessary for me. Here's why I think you should be really examining why you like different colors together, why you like different images in nature, why you really gravitate towards a type of flower, or why you gravitate towards the specific types of plants or leaves, or why you want to garden with petunias, or why you really love sunflowers on a rainy day or something like that. Because I think it not just benefits your art making, I think it also benefits your daily life and consumption of these images when you actually see them. And I think it makes you a better, well-rounded person. Now, I think this is a very strong claim, but I want to go into it a little bit. So, I do want to preface though and say I use a more generalized process when the colors are not so extremely important to the project, but it's the same process. Like, I still use inspiration from nature and use like this general kind of choosing of colors and examination of what makes those colors pleasing to me, or what makes those patterns or whatever very pleasing to me. I think it's all one and the same process, whether it's very complex or really distilled in general. So I will talk a little bit about that too. But I do think it would behoove you to go into why you really like this image before you first settle on, it's the colors together. So for example, if you really liked a kind of leaf with some color variations in it, instead of first thinking, it must just be that chartreuse and that burgundy working together, maybe it is the softness of the edges between these shapes, or maybe it's the overall closeness of the 2 colors. And in that case, I feel like sometimes a project that incorporates colors in a way that is not so harsh could be really good for you to kind of make those patterns that you love so much into a finished fiber project. So for example, if it is the softness, maybe you choose an ombre effect in your knitting with those 2 colors rather than a stripe. If you love this little point of warm yellow light in like a dark image, or you like that little point of contrast, maybe it's buttons you want to put into your work that contrast with the overall piece. So for example, this. So all of that considered, I will kind of say a better example, or like a more involved example of that is maybe, say I wanted to knit a top that reminded me of tiger lilies. I've been obsessed with tiger lilies lately. I think that's surprising to me because it's not colors that I really love in general. I hate orange, and I don't really love black with other colors. I feel like it's too strong personally, and I feel like black and orange next to each other, I just really don't like them at all. Tiger lilies, you see, are kind of like a very dark spot and a bright orangey color. So if I was making a top based on tiger lilies without much analysis, I may do something like this: black and orange stripes, or black and orange with black buttons, like this. I do feel like the orange with black buttons is getting a little bit closer to what I like about the tiger lily, because the black is not so strong, the darker color is not so strong, and it's more of an accent to the lily petal color. However, we've not examined the colors themselves in the tiger lily petal. If we were doing a whole zoom in, this is what's going on just in my head. We zoom into the tiger lily and we're like, it's not really black and orange. Of course. It's more of like a peachy kind of orangey, corally color, almost really bordering on pink. this I vibe with a little bit more. I'm beginning to understand why I like them. And then the spots themselves, I feel like I really like them when they show up a little bit brighter in like a strong maroony cinnamon color. Chef's kiss. Absolutely gorgeous. I love them so much. And these two colors together are phenomenal. I do think they would look beautiful together as a stripe, but if I'm really trying to emanate what I love about the tiger lilies, I think either spots or a speckled yarn or buttons. Adding them as buttons I think is so nice. So here's those two options sketched out on either side. So we have our first one without analysis and then our second one with more analysis. And I would say that the second one is something that I would gravitate even more to. But if we zoom out from the tiger lily itself, and I think, no, what I also love about this is I just love that sagey, dusky, purpley green together with the tiger lily. I think that behind the lily makes the orange stand out and become so much more beautiful because it's bringing out the rosy qualities of the lily, having that green behind it. So what I might do to implement just a little bit of that green is maybe like a little duplicate stitch design on it somewhere. Just having those colors interplay and not just choosing the colors, but also considering how you're putting them into the piece, I think can really help make you, or it helps make me, find a little bit more interest in the piece, and it makes me connect with it a little bit more rather than if I just did stripes of the three colors and left it at that. So you can be having fun with color combos, not just with stripes, but with buttons, with duplicate stitch, stripes, all of them all together. Really whatever you want. The whole world is your oyster when it comes to considering colors, and I feel like it just unlocks so many little doors for your making. But I do think getting into the practice of like truly analyzing why you love a scene or a flower or whatever it may be will better let you incorporate it into your work and do it truly justice. It will make you fully look at this piece and think, I love this because I already know I love this image in nature. So I love this piece because it really truly does remind me of that image. But it also informs you of your preferences. I feel like thinking about things or training your brain to in some way think about things you see and things you like past the point of just being like, I like this, really helps you understand yourself and your preferences. I also think it enriches your viewing experience of the world as a whole because you're doing that. Now I don't know if we're getting too deep here. I know we started with yarn combos, but I want to think of knitting and creating and painting and all these things as just like a fluid part of my experience of the world because I want it to feel like a part of my life that is enriching my life. And I do feel that way because of how I think about color combinations and all this analysis and all these things, because it's making me look at the world as a whole and think about my art practice in the back of my head, just appreciate the world around me better. At the same time, make pieces which feel that much more considered and special to me. So if you want to see some of this very long, diluted stuff in action, if you want to see these color combos come to life, if you want to see my two yarns for my dot top coming together, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll be doing a little bit of that in the next video. We'll be seeing all sorts of yarn and nature and painting little influences all over the place. But thanks for following along and listening to like this little snippet of my mind, how it works involving color. Thank you again. Follow along. If you connected with anything in this video and you want to share some of your own color experiences or anything, let me know. I'd love to hear it.